It is the 19th day of June 2014. Many thanks for joining us on KTN Prime.
Welcome to the program. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta today held a 2-hour meeting with the Coast Parliamentary Group at State House, Nairobi, over the Mpeketoni attacks.
The legislators pledged to work with the government in uniting the residents.
The leaders assured President Uhuru Kenyatta of full support in restoring peace and security in Mpeketoni and the coast region at large.
The group's chairman, Gideon Mungaro, said they have agreed to move from constituency to constituency, preaching peace and unity.
Members of Parliament invited the president to accompany them in their peace missions.
The president said the government has started addressing the land problem in the coast and will not stop until it is completely solved.
Kubaliana ya kwamba kila mtu ataenda kuhubiri amani katika eneo lake. Lakini pia tumekubaliana ya kwamba hivi karibuni tutazunguka pamoja na viongozi hao tukihubiri amani na umoja, tuweze kuhakikisha ya kwamba kama ni utalii tumeweza kurekebisha, vijana wetu waweze kuandikwa. Mambo haya ndio ya maana kwa wananchi wetu, na hiyo ndio jukumu.
Right, 8 people are still missing after the Mpeketoni attacks. The Kenya Red Cross Society revealed that 8 cannot be accounted for 4 days after the first attack on Mpeketoni and Kibaoni areas of Lamu.
The Ministry of Devolution and the Kenya Red Cross Society have launched a program to supply food and water to the victims of the attacks that have seen almost 500 households leave their homes to band together at an IDP camp.
The Ministry of Devolution and Planning and the Kenya Red Cross have said that apart from clothing and food, they will avail special personnel with different ethnic backgrounds to do counseling and to pacify the people there.
Are missing out of the original 60, but I'm sure these are people traumatized and these numbers will be reconciled. We are not saying they're actually missing. We're not confirming the missing as Kenya Red Cross. We're saying is what is reported to us as missing.
The ministry distributed 1,500 blankets, 412 kitchen sets, and 100 cartons of sanitary pads. In relation to food, the ministry distributed 300 bags of maize, 800 bags of rice, 500 bags of beans, and 100 cartons of oil, and 100 cartons of Nutropap, which is given to the children.
You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us. Still on that story in Mpeketoni, a humanitarian crisis is looming in Mpeketoni as more and more people relocate to a designated camp. Over 500 households have left their homes to seek refuge in Kitale and Maporomoko camps amid uncertainty over their safety. Ferdinand Omondi is working on that story, and we will be bringing it your way in just a few minutes. And let's now focus our attention on our Super Wall. The reason why we're telling you to focus your attention on the Super Wall is because we have the screenshot of a Twitter account there. Now, you will recall that immediately after the attack in Mpeketoni, actually a day after, President Uhuru Kenyatta addressed the nation. And in that address, he said this attack had not been carried out by the Al-Shabaab. Now, yesterday, the Inspector General of Police, David Kimayo, said the police had arrested one man said to be behind this Twitter account that is at HSM Press. This account has been posting information on Al-Shabaab and their activities. It was used to claim responsibility for various attacks in Kenya, including the Mpeketoni attack that saw up to 60 people killed. Now, that man, one Ishmael Omondi, was arrested and is in police custody. However, there has been new postings on this Twitter account, with some as recent as a few minutes ago. Of course, this raises so many questions. If the man behind the account was arrested, then who is tweeting using this account? Could the police have arrested the wrong person? Are the police going to show the person they arrested? Are they planning to charge this person in court? Who else is operating this account? Is there someone else with access to this particular account? And if indeed the police arrested the man who's been running this account, then you would expect that this account would be deactivated. Why is it still running? Those are the questions that are on the minds of so many Kenyans, even as we see this story unfold.
Yes, there you have it. As we have told you, the Inspector General of Police did say that man Ishmael Omondi had been arrested, but you can see that account is still posting and more sarcastically. So we shall be focusing on that. Humanitarian crisis looming in Peketoni as more and more people relocate to a designated camp.
Over 500 households have left their homes to seek refuge in Kitale and Maporomoko camps amid uncertainty over their safety.
As KTN's Ferdinand Omondi now tells us from the North Coast, the new IDPs are wondering why they are alone despite promises of police protection.
Take a look.
John Mudike sets up his shelter for the night. It is hardly a shelter to begin with, just polythene, a mat and a mosquito net. But this is what he will call home for the foreseeable future.
Sisi tunaomba Mungu tu, sababu hatuna uwezo mwingine. Sasa mvua ikinyesha, sitatunyeshea tu. Tutaenda wapi? Kama hii umeona hii karatasi ya nylon. Sinaona niko na karatasi. Niliomba kwa mtu jana. Sababu nilifikiria hiyo mambo ya mvua. Nikaona leo nikiwa na hiyo karatasi ya nylon, nitafadhali sababu nitajifunikia maji inamwagika pande kwa pande.
Mudike is one of hundreds of households who have fled from their homes around Kaisari village Mpeketoni over security concerns. The Kitale camp is thickening fast with over 100 households joining the 400 that had been registered a day earlier.
We have so far registered in this particular camp about 506 households, and there is another place called Poromoko where there are about 100 households as well registered.
Most households have at least 6 members each, to mean at least 3,500 persons have been displaced. Majority heeded the advice of the government to leave home and converge here where they were promised security. However, they say not even one policeman has guarded them for the 2 nights they have been here.
Sababu wanaume wanakaa nje kama hapa tunaambiwa endeni uko nje ndio kifanyika kitu mnajua.
Na kesha tu hapa tuliahidiwa kwamba afisa wa security itakuwa hapa, lakini haijapatikana mpaka sasa.
The absence of security is particularly disturbing for Wilson, who has 9 children. He says he was in Kaisari village on the night 9 men were hunted and killed, and says he owes his survival to a neighbor.
Kasikia tu akiita baya, mtoto wangu amefika hapa. Nikamuuliza mtoto wako nani? Akasema Hamisi. Nikamwambia hajafika. Sasa kusema hajafika pale, akasema basi kumeharibika saa hii. Nikamwambia kwa nini kumeharibika? Akasema kule kwangu basi kuna watu wamefika kule na wamemchukua John wakamchukua Peter, na wakasema kwamba waende kwa mzee wao nyumba 10, kuna mkutano huko anataka kufanyika saa hii na wanaitisha vitambulisho. Akasema kwa hivyo tufanye nini saa hii? Akasema sasa wale wanataka wanaume lakini wanawake wanawaacha hapa. Saa hii walikuwa wanakuja huku kwako, lakini nikasema ni mbali na wakasema hawatafika. Kwa hivyo kalazimu sasa tutoke pale kwa nyumba na tukaingia kwa msitu.
The next day, he found out that all the men who had been rounded up had been killed, including the neighbor's husband. He ran here where he had hoped for police protection for himself and his family, which is not forthcoming. The government asked these people to converge here so that the security would be guaranteed. They have responded in their thousands, but they say for the 2nd night in a row, they spend the night without a single policeman in sight. The very men who are being targeted by the killers with guns are now forced to patrol the perimeter with nothing but sticks and pangas. Without sufficient protection, this entire camp is a bullseye with the killers still out there. It's a frustrating ordeal for Wilson, who is afraid to leave his family behind to attend to his duties. Most of the people here were peasant farmers, and a healthy crop of maize was promising a good harvest until the attacks.
Na saa hii ilikuwa mahindi imeanza kukomaa. Ilikuwa bado tu kama mkiza kuhesabu hivi, tuwe tungevuna saa hii. Lakini sasa baada hiyo mashambulizi, fikia sasa uchumi umezidimia saa hii.
Kama saa 12 nimeenda huko kwa samba, nikakuta ng'ombe zimeingia hiyo kidogo. Sasa sioni wale wako na ng'ombe. Hata hizi tumbili zimekuwa zikiingia, lakini nikaona ile tafadhali hiyo mahindi iwe namna hiyo, nitafute usalama.
The government has lately been trying to convince the people of Mpeketoni to resume normal activities. Inspector General David Kimayo revealed today that 3 people who had been arrested over the attacks were charged in court with murder.
Soon we are going to get more suspects, depending on the information that we are receiving and the evidence that we are already recording statements, so that a number of some of the suspects that were mentioned can also be charged in accordance with the law.
But while schools have reopened, many parents are still holding their children back, including Mama Bahati Hamisi, who insists she won't let her children out of sight as long as she feels unsafe.
Naka sasa hii tayari tuko huku na mashule ni huko, hatujamii hatani roho zetu hazijaridhika kutoa watoto ende shule kwa haraka hii. Paka tujue kabisa hali imekuwa sawa, hakuna wasiwasi, manake mtoto ni mtoto.
It is about 5 p.m. and the A team packs out for the day. When darkness falls, the men in camp will once again patrol the perimeter with sticks and pangas and hope for the best. Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Kitale, Lamu County.
Ferdinand Omondi with the sights and sounds from down in Mpeketoni. Meanwhile, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy Code has called off 2 of their rallies that were slated for this weekend to honor victims of the Mpeketoni attack. The coalition, however, maintained that from early next month till Sabasaba Day, the rallies will be back on. But what exactly is the agenda in these rallies? KTN's Ashamulu takes an in-depth look.
An unrelenting Raila Odinga in Kisii County reminded his supporters of the big agenda this coming month. The Coalition for Reform and Democracy is adamant that it will push on with its planned rallies ahead of the Sabasaba Day. However, CORD's scheduled rally in Kisii this weekend has been pushed to the 4th of July, while the Nakuru rally slated for Sunday has been cancelled in honor of the Mpeketoni attack victims. But even with this gesture of solidarity, the opposition is still in the spotlight for not cancelling all its rallies altogether. The government believes that CORD leaders are up to no good.
The inciters have also given examples of other countries where thousands of citizens have died and been maimed in similar circumstances.
Unfazed by this statement, Raila repeated the same warning.
Countries where leadership has been intransigent, obstinate, and refused to listen to calls for dialogue have ended up in very bad ways. You should ask the late Mobutu Sese Seko, Kungwazabanga. When they wanted to talk, they did not want to talk. When he wanted them to talk, they told him it was too late.
Dr. Richard Bosire is one of the senior political science lecturers at the University of Nairobi. He reads no ill motive in CORD's statements.
By referring to Mobutu, it doesn't mean you are saying we have a military wing, CORD saying we have a military wing that is going to fight. No. It's only saying that have we learned from other countries? Nigeria has had serious issues with Boko Haram. They are unable actually to stamp out Boko Haram in the country.
I think CORD has solutions. I don't think.
Fellow political scientist Martin Olo would beg to differ.
We agree on elections. You may not like the outcome of elections, but we have to live with them. Now, certainly, to say we have a dictatorship and to equate it even in some of the dictatorships around is to me a misleading statement, and therefore I wouldn't believe any politician who tells me that the situation in this country is so bad that it's only comparable to some of our failed neighbor states. I think that that's stretching our imagination, and that is perhaps letting out the real intentions of these rallies.
CORD's critics have raised the red flag over the coalition's rhetoric in their rallies, arguing that CORD leaders are signaling the genesis of a revolution.
Atakiona kama jirani ananyolewa, na wewe anza kufanya nini? Usipotia maji, utanyolewa bila maji. Simuona kama majirani wananyolewa? Tumwambia anza kutia maji, kichwa maji.
Sasa Uhuru ajue we are not cooling down any soon. In fact, it might get hotter.
Sasa tumesema ukikataa, Sabasaba ni national holiday.
The Raila we are seeing seems to be Raila that is saying, look, it's now or never. I have to either show what I'm made of or I will never have the opportunity. So he's kicking and he's making sure that in terms of pushing his agenda, he's being abrasive about it. And perhaps the period he's been out of government and out in the US has given him time to recollect and to decide on a path.
These rallies have been done for the last only 2 weeks. Yeah, it's not something that it's actually kind of spontaneous. People are told we're going to meet at Uhuru Park, and they're full. But for me, it's an indicator to the state that actually people are aware of their rights, and actually they kind of support the opposition on this one.
God will not in any way try to divide our people. It is the responsibility of the president to act responsibly and not to try to divide the Kenyans or polarize the relationship among Kenyan community at this very critical moment in our country's history.
My deputy and I undertook to make sure that the country will never go the route of ethnic division and political violence. I reiterate that Kenya will not go that route again.
As July 7th fast approaches, CORD appears to be gathering momentum for their agenda. Meanwhile, Jubilee is planning counter-rallies on the same day. The fear is that with the two political giants on the campaign trail this early, perhaps the real issues Kenyans are facing could end up as simply a sidebar. Ashamwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
All right, so how do you learn to hate? That is a question that many Kenyans who are continually shocked by the ethnic and political violence that has claimed so many lives ask themselves. But do Kenyans look at the context in which hatred can fester? Do they really hear what their leaders are telling them, or blindly follow the hateful and insightful edicts of their leaders? Tonight, John Allan Namu puts you face to face with the insightful language being spoken by our leaders. Take a look at this.
63 Kenyans lie dead in Mpeketoni, murdered. And rather than stand united and pull the nation together, death is now a tool for politics.
You must wait for 2017. You can't massacre our people. You cannot massacre our people. You want to ascend to leadership through the blood of our people. You want to become president through the blood of our people, and we will not allow him.
Simuona juzi watu wanauawa kama nzige kule Mpeketoni. Simesoma. Simeona. Na serikali iko wapi?
Since when did the terrorists know that there are certain people who must be cleansed before others? Mr. Speaker, sir, I speak this without a fear of contradiction. What we saw in Mpeketoni is ethnic cleansing, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is not terrorism, Mr. Speaker, sir.
But should you be surprised? Probably not. After all, the one quality that perhaps all politicians admire in their supporters is their supporters' short memories. Because if the public that is now either on one side or the other were to remember just what their place has come to be in Kenyan politics, many politicians would not have a crowd to speak to. They say they respect one another.
In moments like this, we must unite.
Or that they ought to.
It is an issue that we must all be able to come together.
But in the blink of an eye, insults to get the crowd them charged begin to flow.
But there are two tribes, and they think they own this country, and we want to tell them, chuma wanachu. Si wao wana own country peke yake.
Munataka tuache nchi yetu isambaratike mikononi mwa kabila mawili.
Mababa zetu walipigana tupate uhuru, hatuwezi kwenda kulabalaba matako ya wasugu.
And then, once a crowd is primed, they call the public to stand by them.
Nchi yetu imetekwa nyara na kabila mbili. Na sisi tunataka kukomboa nchi yetu. Na siku ya ukombozi ni tarehe 7 mwezi wa 7.
Vile wanasema wanataka kuchukua serikali ina nguvu, waambie wasahau. Sisi akina mama tutafaa mifuto, tutaenda kufanya vile watajua.
They may think that they can separate themselves from what they say.
We are not cooling down any soon.
When we are talking politics in rallies, that is very different from what we are having here.
But look at the effect that it has on the public that they are speaking to. Social media is now awash with hateful, deadly messages. But the public is taking its cue from its leadership on both sides of the political divide. The middle ground for sense to prevail is fast shrinking, and with analogies like these, and responses like these,
asije akatutisha na tunawaambia sisi tumefika miaka ya kuitwa babu, hata kama ni kwenda tuende, lakini hatutakubali. Anadanganya wa Kenya ati MLC na Al-Shabaab, tunamjua hiyo ni jeshi yake, na alipeleka kuiltrain mwezi wa 4, na bado ana wengine tunawajua.
It is not only him who is a man in this country. There are others who are men equal and enough. And we will not entertain this kind of nonsense anymore.
Kenya is headed to a place that many swore they would never return to. Where, like on the night of the 1st of January 2008 in Mathare, the screams of anguish from inter-ethnic violence broke the night air. Where Kenyan turned against Kenyan. And like I witnessed in Huruma on the 2nd of January 2008, there is no middle ground.
The street I'm standing on currently is a virtual no man's land here in Huruma, with one community on one side and the other community right behind me on the other, facing off right in the middle. Police are having a very difficult time trying to intervene.
Hatred knows no tribe, and the grave knows no politics.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
So who should be ashamed when threats of violence and rumors of war come from the leaders themselves? You decide. John Alanamu, KTN.
Indeed, you decide. And that is the basis of our big question tonight. We are asking you, do you think politicians are deliberately setting Kenyans against one another?
You've watched the story by John Alanamu. Let us know what you think on that. We would love to sample some of your views during this bulletin. You're watching KTN Prime. Stay with us. We'll be right back. A few minutes, Kitili.
Yes, now let's take a look at insecurity of a different measure. Now the government's plan to increase, and the Baringo County authorities rather have told members of the Ilchamus community not to abandon their land and homes over last night's attacks by a neighboring community. The Mariga Deputy County Commissioner has assured the victims that security agencies will ensure their safety. But as KTN's Kamchamanza reports, the Ilchamus are saying that they've had it all before and they are taking no chances.
It was yet another attack that struck these residents of Ilchamus community at Makutani in Marigat, who woke up on Thursday morning to find their houses torched. Fortunately, though, none of them was in their houses. This woman faced a rough time as she went through labor pains amid the attack, bringing to the world these 2 bouncing babies. Most of them have been avoiding staying in their houses at night for the last 1 month, fearing more attacks after a raid 3 weeks ago reduced 7 houses to ashes. According to the residents, a conflict between the Ilchamus and Pokot communities erupted in 2005, leaving most of them losing their livestock, and some of the survivors opted to vacate the area.
2009 2010
kuna amani, wameongea na hawa na wamekubali, ndio tukarudishwa hapa hivi.
More so in starting irrigation, which was started. Here we have Mukutani irrigation scheme, which has been doing very well.
For 3 years, though, they say they have been living in peace. However, the renewed attacks in the last 1 month have seen people fleeing to Makutani Primary School for safety. Last night attack, however, is said to have occurred after Red Cross delivered non-food materials to the victims of an earlier attack.
The other community, of course, felt like they should also be assisted. And they demanded to be given these non-food items, which were left. Why don't we be assisted as well? And this brought about some commotion.
Tuone venye tutaenda kufanya huko. Afadhali tuhamie Marigat tu, lakini tuone tu bara tu uwe na maisha mzuri, sio maisha ya kubunduki na moto.
So we are not ready to wait people to die. What we want is to take our people back home safely, because the police are there, but they're doing nothing.
The Deputy County Commissioner restricted their leave, saying there is no cause for alarm and that the security has been reinforced in the area. Kamchemenza, KTN.
The government's plan to increase geothermal power production in Suswa has brought a lot of issues. The local Maasai community, which is laying claim to the land, say to hold geothermal potential, has vowed to scuttle the government's efforts unless proper consultations are done and compensation made. KTN's Rita Tinina reports on the latest controversy and the unfulfilled promises by President Uhuru Kenyatta that has angered the residents.
Stretching from Nakuru County to the border between Narok and Kajiado counties are just over 75,000 acres of land that the local Maasai community is laying claim to.
Originally, the colonial masters held it. When the lease expired, we, the people of here, expected this land to revert back to us.
But this is not your ordinary vast piece of land. On the Nakuru side, the land in dispute is adjacent to the Olkaria geothermal power plant. On the Narok side, at Kedong Ranch, the local community claims 3 geothermal power companies have begun prospecting for geothermal power. To protest the latest move by the power generating companies, the community barricaded the Nairobi-Narok Maasai Mara Road for over 5 hours on Wednesday.
Kama hawatakuja kukaa chini na community ya Maasai wasikizane vile moto itatolewa, hatutakubali.
We don't have a problem with sharing our resource with everybody else in the country, but we feel really bad that every time we are the ones who end up suffering.
The community moved to court 10 years ago, seeking adversarial possession of the land. The case is yet to be concluded. They say they are ready to pay the ultimate price for the land they claim is theirs.
We are ready to die. If it is death, we are ready. We have been marginalized.
Hakuna haja ya kuishi tukiwa hai. Heri tukufe ndio tukue tumesikwa hapa hii area.
The stakes are indeed high. The government is banking on part of the land to help boost geothermal power production. Olkaria produces just over 200 megawatts of electricity. Experts, however, estimate it has the potential of generating between 7,000 and 10,000 megawatts. Last year, evictions in Narasha, which is part of the land in dispute, generated unusual interest in government. The president, his deputy, 2 governors, 2 senators and 25 MPs visited affected residents.
We can execute these things in a civilized manner.
The government formed a committee to look into the dispute, but it is the unfulfilled promise of compensation that has angered the local community.
Na tutahakikisha ya kwamba kila mmoja atapata haki yake.
The entire government went to Narasha and they said we will compensate the Maasais.
Mpaka wa leo hatujaona tena.
And if there is that committee that was so called that was formed, are they compromised?
Now, the community has given the government a 14-day ultimatum to look into the land dispute.
Na tutahakikisha barabara tutafunga na tutapambana na hao mpaka haki yetu sikizwe.
The land in dispute is said to hold great potential for geothermal power, but with the local community laying ancestral claim to it. The government's grand plan to increase geothermal power production may not kick off just yet. Rita Tinina, KTN, Suswa.
To another land feud, and tension is high in Kitengela area of Kajiado County ahead of the funeral for the persons who died in the company of former Mungiki leader Maina Njenga. And as KTN's Joy Doreen Bira now tells us, a section of the Maasai community from Kitengela want the government to cancel the funeral and have it moved to another burial site.
In Kitengela, Kajiado County, dozens of agitated Maasai men armed with spears, clubs and some machetes paraded their full presence before the police deployed to beef up security in the area. All this to send a warning to former Mungiki leader Maina Njenga not to hold a burial in Kitengela for those who were killed in a shootout 3 weeks ago.
Pili ya Mungiki haiwezi si kwa Kajiado County. Sio kwa Maina, Kajiado County.
Hiyo mazishi haitafanyika, acha kafanyike Kiambu, mambo huko kwa hiyo Mungiki wali walichinjana. Hapana hapa Kajiado.
5 people were killed when Maina Njenga's car was shot at in Nyahururu, and they were to be buried this Saturday in Kitengela. The Kajiado County Commissioner now says he will not accept the peace of the residents to be interfered with.
Tunataka hii mazishi ipelekwe mahali pengine, sio hapa. Mimi nimesema hivyo pia sio kwa sababu yenu peke yenu, pia kwa sababu ya usalama ya Maina Njenga.
It is normal, you know, in our country what is happening today. We must beef up security in all areas, and especially you know what happened maybe a month ago. There was a fight between the Mungiki group. They know what happened, so we are not taking chances about the issues of security.
The Maasais insist that they would willingly compensate Maina Njenga for his land if only to avoid more conflict in Kitengela. Maina Njenga, however, says the burial will go on as planned as arrangements have been finalized and that he hasn't received any information to cancel the burial. Joy Doreen Bira, KTN.
All television stations might soon have to provide sign language interpretation or subtitles in their productions to ensure the inclusion of persons with hearing impairment. A new bill is now headed to Parliament to effect changes to the existing law. As KTN's Ian Wafula now reports, the proposal has been welcomed by delegates at the East African Community Conference on Persons with Disabilities.
Persons with disabilities from across the East African region are speaking with one voice, and the theme for their conference this year is integration. It emerged that despite the efforts to recognize and assist persons with disabilities, the region is still lagging behind in meeting the Millennium Development Goals. They say the majority of persons with disabilities within the region are living below the poverty line and unable to access basic needs.
Let us make laws that are not soft, that are not implementable. Laws that are just bent on creating some feel-good attitude. Laws that only seem to promote the morality of including persons with disabilities as part of tokenism, as part of charity. Persons with disabilities demand their rights.
A person's environment has a major impact on the experience and extent of disability. Inaccessible environments create disability by creating barriers to participation and inclusion.
The conference came at a time when Nyandarua County Women Representative Wanjiku Muhia is proposing amendments to the Persons with Disabilities Act 2013 to have all TV stations provide sign language inset, similar to what KTN has been doing to include viewers with hearing impairment.
Then the other media houses who are not having interpreters, we need that so that we can be able to access the information for all. Because it's a challenge for the deaf people, because it's not fair when we don't have that captions in other TV media houses.
The bill seeks to amend Section 39 of the Act to state that all television stations shall provide a sign language inset or subtitles in all newscasts and educational programs and in all programs of national significance.
Speaks of reasonable rights, fundamental rights, and persons with disability in Kenya have been ignored in getting or accessing any rights, particularly on state issues. I'm concerned of how they are not aware of what happens in our country.
The chair lady of the Kenya Sign Language Interpreters Association, Leonida Tausi, says this was long overdue.
KTN has been doing this. They have had sign language interpreters for some time now, and the reception has been quite good.
Leonida has taught sign language for over 20 years, and she notes that more needs to be done to empower not only deaf persons, but persons with disabilities in general, as they are shunned by the community.
However, I will still come with more amendment, like the education system. I would like us to have a look on the overhaul of education system, because this person do the same exam with me and you, which I feel is not fair.
Ian Wafula, KTN.
My name is Bonitunya. This is Business. Kenya has received a 52 billion shilling grant from the 11th European Development Fund that will be used for projects in the country. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich says the broad areas to be focused on in the grants will be on food security and disaster management, as well as infrastructure projects. Specifically, the funds will be used in expansion of the Nairobi's public transport infrastructure to fight congestion in the capital, increase food production and improve drought management systems, and in supporting a stronger governance. The funds will be disbursed every year for specific projects for 7 years. Kenya is one of the 15 African countries, including Somalia, Ethiopia and Tanzania, signing their development pact with the European Union. Now, according to the Union's Development Commissioner, Anders Pielbags, the total disbursement to Africa under the 11th EDF is 3 trillion shillings. Safaricom, Samsung and Google have partnered with Strathmore University to launch 2 centers of excellence for telecommunication, innovation and development. The centers will equip young graduates with the skills to become work ready immediately after school. Here is Adel Changole.
Is graduating from the Strathmore University next week with a bachelor's degree in business and IT. But unlike other 22-year-olds, Martha will not have to look for a job once she's done with school.
When I was in third year, I actually decided I don't want to be employed and I want to get a business running by the time I graduate.
She partnered up with iTonBet to set up Papink, an online gift shop that allows customers to shop for custom-made gifts that are wrapped and delivered to their destination of choice throughout Kenya. And 2 years in, the business is going strong.
We see Papink as a company actually being the preferred gifting service for most corporates in the country.
Papink is just one of the 36 startups launched from IBIS Africa, the Business Innovation Center at Strathmore University, focusing on a variety of programs for entrepreneurs, among them business, marketing and legal mentorship. Combined with iLab Africa, the latest edition will feature entrepreneurial skills for the youth. Safaricom has so far invested 30 million in the 2 centers.
We're training them not to go and look for jobs, but go out there, create wealth and create jobs for others.
From the number of applications, which indeed we use in Safaricom and many other people use, we've seen that you do produce useful citizens.
It is such developments that government says it will also be doing to enhance efficiency in public service delivery.
That we want to implement about 16 key projects in this sector. In each one of them, we will need high-end skills to manage virtually all aspects of what we would like to do. And we look forward to universities and resource sites such as these to work with us.
The government is hoping such investments can see ICT contributions to the GDP rise from the current 3% to 8% within the next 5 years. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
Debate continues to take place on whether the just released 2014-2015 financial year budget was indeed people-driven. And Adelaide Changole spoke to analysts from the Institute of Economic Affairs on what they thought about this.
The 2014-2015 financial year budget has been touted as a people's budget because it did not feature any of the usual tax increases. But a deep analysis has uncovered worrying trends that could have significant implications on taxpayers once the proposals are implemented. Addressing Parliament during the budget statement session, National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich implied that Kenya would achieve significant economic growth this year despite a slowdown in key economic sectors.
Without concrete measures to cushion our economy from economic shocks, we are unlikely to realize the revenues that we've projected as a country.
IEA is also questioning the president's tax rebate proposal. The proposal, which will cost taxpayers 2.4 billion shillings in foregone revenues, seeks to spur domestic tourism. But analysts say the move will only increase refund claims from the Kenya Revenue Authority, which already owes Kenyan traders up to 30 billion shillings.
There's that worry that because of the delays with the refunds for VAT, this is also likely to face the similar delays.
Also in the proposals is the increase in levy for imported steel and iron, which seeks to protect the local steel sector. But even this is drawing criticism, with experts saying the move was selective and targeted at a small section of the manufacturing sector.
It is important to have had some proposal that would go towards enhancing competition within the entire manufacturing sector.
With a number of infrastructure projects in the pipeline, funding the historic budget still remains a puzzle. Already the government has announced plans to raise 191 billion shillings from the local market this year. This, the analysts from IEA say, will crowd out the private sector and subject investors to higher interest rates, which could impact on the economy.
We might actually end up paying more through interest rates and higher costs of credit for both private firms as well as individuals.
So is this really the people's budget? You decide. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
And while you decide, Kenya is key to growing intra-Africa trade. This is according to logistics firm DHL Express Sub-Saharan Managing Director Charles Brewer. Speaking at a press conference in Nairobi, Brewer noted that Kenya's improvement in infrastructure and growth of small and medium enterprises was ideal in connecting local businesses to the neighboring African countries.
For us in Africa, I think, and as we're moving away from global talk about Africa, that sector, the SME sector, the small and medium-sized enterprise sector, is the most important sector for us right now.
Right, here's a look at how the markets closed this Thursday afternoon on the Financial Market Review, coming up next.
Financial Report, brought to you by KCB Home Loans.
We got 105% mortgage from KCB.
It covered all our costs. Deposit, legal fees, duty, everything. We've seen an apartment, but go to KCB.
Setting Kenyans against each other. 95% of you say yes, 5% of you say no.
Yes, and some of your views, Otieno Elvis says their children, the politicians' children, are in Brazil enjoying the World Cup and we are being separated on tribal lines. Shame.
At Calvin_Ski says, maybe it's time the Kenyan media effects coverage blackout on politicians spreading hate.
Jacob Okechi says politicians are doing their jobs. The choice to hate or not to hate lies with you and me. So why hate?
Atrika Kura says, no, Kenyans know the history of Rwanda. They know post-election violence. They have just blocked their eyes. Well, those are your opinions. Thank you for writing in, for being part of KTN Prime. We'll see you in a week?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, and my name is Ben Kiteli. Have a wonderful night from the Standard Group Center. Right now, though, we take you to Jeff Konange with Jeff Konange Live.